Good evening, everyone. My name is Maggie. On behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our virtual event with Elizabeth Gilpin in conversation with Stephanie Stoller. Sorry, we have some feedback. Can both of you ladies make sure that you don't have anything open in the background?
What kind of thing?
Like websites or anything.
Oh wow, I can't hear anything.
Sorry, this is a common thing, and for some reason it only shows up. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, this is a very common thing. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our virtual event with Elizabeth Gilpin in conversation. Oh, sorry, we still have a little bit of feedback. We need to fix this quickly. Molly and Elizabeth, I think someone has their mic or their video open in another setting. So can you make sure that there's no other websites open, and then all other
Whoa. I don't have anything open. Don't have anything open.
Let me 1 second. Let me. I'm sorry. Let me. I'm sorry.
Woo.
Okay, so if you can go up and I'm sorry.
Woo.
Sorry, I need everyone to force quit. Can you hear me now? Can you speak up? Can you hear me?
How do I? Yes. How do I? Yeah. How do I? Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. So Molly, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, so it's coming from Elizabeth.
It is.
Sorry,
yeah.
Sorry, audience. This will only take a moment. This happens quite a bit. Okay. Give us just 1 second, please. Okay, right now we're here with Molly Bloom. Elizabeth will be joining us shortly. We're so excited and grateful that our bookstore can continue to bring authors and their works to our community during this time. Elizabeth will be back on in just a second. We'll be hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn more about them on our website, booksoup.com, as well as our social media at BookSoup. Our next event is tomorrow, August 4th, with BookSoup Presents Reborn in the USA, Hooray for Hollywood, virtual event at 6 p.m. I just saw that Elizabeth is back. Okay. She is going to be right back on. Just a second. Okay, so while we wait for Elizabeth, please support our bookstore and our authors and purchase a copy of tonight's featured book. Just click on the green purchase button that reads Stolen, a Memoir directly below the viewer screen. The link will redirect you to our website where you can continue your checkout process. Tonight's books will come with signed book plates. And we're also selling digital audiobooks and ebooks through Libro FM and Kobo for those who are interested. If you'd like to ask a question during the event, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen and type it in. Please do not use the sidebar chat to ask a question. A little bit more about Elizabeth. She's an actress, writer, and producer. She starred and produced Lifeboat, a short film directed by Lorraine Nicholson, which premiered at the 2017 Tribeca Film Festival. The film was nominated for the Grand Jury Prize for Live Action Short Film at AFI Fest and won the Audience Award at the Napa Valley Film Festival. Elizabeth also starred in Endings, Incorporated, and Gara. Stolen is her first book. A little more about Molly. Molly attended the University of Colorado at Boulder, majoring in political science. For several years, she organized one of the largest high-stakes poker games in the country. a film adaptation of her book, Molly's Game, starring Jessica Chastain and directed by Aaron Sorkin, debuted in December 2017. And let's just try to get her back on screen. She said that she's here. It won't let her put her on screen. Give me a minute. I am re-inviting you, Elizabeth. Everyone, please hold tight.
I just feel bad. Molly's.
Here we go. Awesome.
Okay.
We're still receiving a lot of feedback from you, Elizabeth.
Sorry. I don't have anything open.
Are you sure? Did you quit?
I have nothing open.
Let me close mine. Do you have another device you can use?
Yeah, I'm logging onto another computer now.
Okay.
Sorry, Molly. It was working earlier.
I'm toggling her mic so that the sound doesn't really bother. For all of you who just signed in, Elizabeth's having some trouble with her computer. We're going to get another one up and running in just a second.
Nothing on that. Like. Okay, I'm doing it on my computer. My phone. Can you see me?
We're sorry about this. This is one of those things that comes up at the last minute.
Poppy, come here.
Hi. So, Molly, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself while Elizabeth signs in?
Sure. I think Elizabeth and I connected. We have a mutual friend who kind of knew what I went through, and with trying to get a memoir published and trying to get a very vulnerable memoir published. And so she connected Elizabeth and I, and I really fell in love with Elizabeth. She has such a kind heart and sweet spirit, and she actually sent me her book early on, and I remember reading this manuscript and just being in absolute horror, because I could relate, as many young kids can relate, to being angry and confused and trying to deal with being a teenager in a very confusing world, and acting out because your brain's not finished developing and you don't know how to manage these hard emotions. And then just to reading this memoir and conceptualizing what she went through was mind-blowing to me, and I'm just I'm really proud of her that she's written her story. I know how difficult it is. I remember going through the process myself, and asking myself, like, what stories can I tell? What stories can't I tell? And you know, how can I be honest and vulnerable and authentic without hurting other people? And, you know, it's a really tough process, and it's tough to go back into that trauma and that pain. And I hope that, you know, what she experiences is similar to some of the, you know, gifts that I got, which is you have this ability to connect with people who have been through similar experiences. And so, you know, I'm just really honored that I've gotten to be a small part of Elizabeth's process. You know, our stories are very different, but the process of writing a memoir, I think.
Am I in?
Yes.
Yeah, you're good.
The process of writing a memoir.
You know, I think no matter what you're writing, it's similar. It's terrifying. You know, it's terrifying and it's hard. But I know Elizabeth worked it off.
Don't worry.
I did. What?
I was saying, don't worry, we didn't lose any viewers. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Sorry, guys, it was working during the tech check. I don't know what happened.
I'm going to take my face off screen and have these two beautiful faces there instead. I would definitely like to hear more, Molly, from you about a little more about your story.
Yeah. Like right now, Maggie? Yeah, well, I think we should get into Elizabeth's story. So, Elizabeth, hello.
Hi, sorry about the 11 minutes.
I'm glad you have lost the echo. That was intense.
Well,
I was just kind of, when you were off screen, I was talking about how we met and how we connected, and how, you know, I've been super honored to be a small part of your journey, and how hard you've worked on this, and, you know, what a
long journey.
Yeah, and what tricky business it is to write memoir. You know,
I know.
So, but let's get into the story. So basically, and I'll never forget reading this part when you sent me the manuscript, but this whole nightmare started for you when you were kidnapped in the middle of the night by strangers. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Well, it's this very, it's fun. People always ask me this, and I'm like, it's hard to explain, because when they first come in the room, you do think you're being kidnapped, because obviously, like, why is someone in your home ripping you from your bed forcefully? Very quickly, they tell you, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Basically, your parents know we're here and you're coming with us. So they tell you very quickly that your parents know that they're there. My mom had gone out of town, so it was just my dad. My brother and sister were gone. It all happened so fast that you don't know what's happening, because you don't know escort services exist. I didn't know Woods programs existed, and I certainly didn't know therapeutic boarding schools existed. So it was this thing where it was happening so fast. I didn't even ask really, like once we were gone, where I was going, but I passed my dad in the hallway, and he just told me, you know, I'm sorry. And I will never forget the look on his face. But I knew, or I thought, because my parents had done it, I was going to be safe. So I didn't really ask, you know, anything else. I don't know what I thought, because I didn't know these places existed. And I just sat so angry and felt so betrayed. But I had no idea what was coming next. And I obviously was not safe. And I wasn't safe for a very long time.
So that anger and betrayal you were talking about, is that what you felt when you realized that your parents were behind this?
Yeah, like when I passed my dad, like that picture of my dad in the hallway, like if I close my eyes right now, I can picture the hallway perfectly, and I can picture him standing. I know exactly where he's standing. You know, it's just, yeah, I mean, I'll never forget that moment. That was probably the worst moment I've ever had with my parents.
Yeah, understandably. So can you tell us a little bit about what came next?
I was taken to the Appalachian Mountains. Again, I still didn't know what was going on, but I was strip searched and drug tested and given a uniform, and they wouldn't tell me where I was because as if I was going to know how to navigate the Appalachian Mountains, I might run away. And I had, if you've read the book, which you've read the book, but I had tried to run away when my parents first told me they were taking me to summer camp, which was to the wilderness. So they knew I was someone prone to running. So they wouldn't tell me anything. But yeah, I arrived in the woods where I stayed for 3 months, and it was a different kind of abuse than I suffered at Carlbrook, but also the same. It was just manipulative and mean. You can't call your parents. I ate cold most of the time. It was pretty just awful. So I feel like I spent that entire time I was gone just in like a permanent state of survival mode.
Well, you were in survival mode. You were living in the woods trying to survive.
Yeah, but I mean like mentally, physically.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's understandable.
Just trying to figure out like,
yeah.
What do I say? What do I do? Like anything to get out of here.
Right.
That was the scariest part, just like wanting to get out, and this threat of lockdown that looms over you. That was the scariest thing for me, that thinking that I didn't even know what lockdown was, but they're like, have you ever brushed your teeth, not been able to brush your teeth alone or worn a straitjacket? These are the threats that they would tell me. And they were like, they keep you till you're 21. And at that point I'm 15 years old. So that's 6 years. So that terrified me. I would have said or done anything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you were 15. How do you think you managed to cope with this mental and physical abuse and the tests that were thrown at you during this time?
I mean, I don't know if I really was coping with them, to be totally honest with you. I think it was just, I just knew I wanted to get out, and I knew it was either like get out and say and become who they wanted me to become and who they believed I was, or there was this place called lockdown I was going. So it was just, I didn't have a choice, but I would not say I coped with it at all. I would say like most nights I cried myself to sleep and I was terrified all the time. But unfortunately, like those places taught me how to smile when I wanted to cry. So I could see like totally okay. And like, really, I'm dying inside. And just, I learned how to like write letters that were benign and totally polar opposite to what I was feeling. But my parents had no idea because my letters were like, we had, I don't even, just totally opposite of what was going on because I was too scared to write it. And even if I had, I don't know if they would have mailed it. It's not like I directly sent, everything was screened through my counselor, my therapist, my this, my that. So yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't cope with it. And that I know that because when I got out of Carlbrook, I just became a total train wreck, a drug addict, eating disorders, all of it. I mean, if there was ever a time in my life I should have died, and I said this in the book, it was after Carlbrook, because I guess all the coping I hadn't done, I did everything I could to medicate and not, try and deal with what I had been through.
So, I mean, it seems like during your time in the woods, you kind of got to this place, and like you were talking about survival mode, where you realized you had to play the game to graduate.
Yeah, I realized very fast that you either play the game or something bad happens. So I played the game.
Right.
And I've spoken to multiple people about this, and, we all played the game, and each person's game was different. But I mean, I wouldn't say anyone's game was easier than the next.
Yeah. So after your time in the woods, how long was that?
3 months, just over.
They brought you to Carlbrook.
My same escorts picked me up and brought me to Carlbrook.
And what was your first impression of Carlbrook?
It looked so perfect that It's like being in Dead Poet Society. Like, it's this beautiful school with a white picket fence, and they take you up to the carriage house, and it's the stone manor. The lawn is perfectly manicured, and there's a lake or a pond, whatever you want to call it, and geese, and all the kids are in their little J. Crew. And honestly, it's terrifying. It's so perfect. But I was strip searched within 30 seconds of being there. I knew immediately I was not safe the second I was strip searched. I learned things like I was on bands with people. Like, it was just this, it was very obvious I wasn't safe. And then I went to my first last light and I saw smushing, which was like human dominoes of kids laying on kids, like two heads in a lap, a head on a stomach, teachers with the students. That is one of the things that makes my stomach physically sick when I think about it. And the smushing would then extend into workshops. And that would be like, we would be in a circle abusing each other, telling our friend they were a whore or whatever, and then beating them down, breaking them down. And then when the exercise was over, we'd be expected to like smush and cry with the kids. Like we hadn't just called them a whore or an evil, whatever it was. It was this very confusing thing where like you had to be totally intimate and like emotionally involved with someone, and yet you had to destroy them. And you had, like, at any moment you had to be their worst enemy or their best friend. But they weren't really either.
And the counselors, teachers, facilitators, they're mandating this. Yeah. They're ordering you.
If you didn't smush, they would assign you smushing. So yes, it was mandated.
And the shame that they ordered you to put forth to the other kids. I mean, that was their idea. That was their requirement.
The things that I look at, the things that I was forced to say to kids, I still think about the things that were said to me, the things that were said to them. I look at like all my friends who have struggled, whatever it is, and I think about what I said to them. And even though I was forced to do it, I now wonder, like, what part of their pain did I play? Like, what role in their pain did I play? Because I was forced to give them a lie, to give them my harshest judgments, to like tear them apart. And I had no choice. If you didn't participate, you just got it worse. If you didn't participate, you got on a program, you got pulled out of school, you dug up a stump. There was no end in sight. They would hold you back. You'd stay at I'm going to stay at the school 6 more months. So they forced you to abuse your classmates.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So within this crazy hostile environment, how did you establish friendships or create a support system with your peers? Or did you?
Well, the only way you're going to survive a hostile environment like that is through your friendships. Mm-hmm. You learn as best you can to separate that your friend who just called you a whore had no choice. So even though they say these terrible things to you in workshops, you just learn that is part of the culture and that has nothing to do with your friendship. But my friends are the reason I survived there. I mean, it was incredibly difficult to see my friends after Carlbrook just because of what we had been through, what I had seen, like what they had seen me go through, what I had seen them go through. It was just like a constant reminder. But without friendships there, I wouldn't have gotten through it. Like those little moments in the mods that I talk about where you're like stretching your pants out with stuffed animals or having pizza behind the dumpster when you're running crews. Like those were the moments, or like the moments where you sit on the bench by the lake and talk to your friend on the way to class. Like those are the moments where you like develop bonds, or, like the scrapbook they made you for your birthday. And those were the people that, you turned to as much as you possibly could.
Yeah. So was the staff licensed to work with kids? I mean, were they even licensed therapists?
I am not going to speak to statistics because I don't know them, but while there were licensed staff, there were many staff who were not licensed at all to be working with children. And I will say, if a licensed staff was working there, whatever, I don't know what training they went through, what we did at Carlbrook was disgusting and abusive, and there's just no way that they were practicing what they had been taught. So whether they were licensed or not, the way that we were treated was as though they were all unlicensed.
No question. In the book, you discuss how music was used as part of the therapeutic workshops. Can you speak to how this impacted you?
Yeah, music was used as a way to trigger emotions. So if I put on Bette Midler, The Rose, or The Doors, Break On Through to the Other Side, like if they wanted you to get angry, they'd put on an angry song like Eye of the Tiger or Break On Through to the Other Side. If they wanted you to get sad, they'd put on The Rose or Switchfoot or something like that to get you to start crying. And they would essentially play the music on a loop. And you'd start to associate your emotions and the yelling that they were doing at you and the abuse they were doing at you, or the, guided visual they were doing with you with the music. So your emotions would very much be in line with the music. I would not listen to music after Carlbrook. And when I would get in really dark places, I would literally lock myself into my apartment in Los Angeles and put on like the saddest, darkest music I could find and listen to it on a loop, just like I learned at Carlbrook, because they destroyed music for me for so long, because so many things were associated with my emotions, and like this song's supposed to make me feel this. And it's weird. After I wrote the book, I have a lot healthier relationship with music. When I was writing the book, I listened to the Carlbrook CD, which made me want to throw up. They gave us like a 4-disc CD packet, as if we would ever want to listen to any of that music again. But I listened to all of it. I watched all the movies they made us watch there, Les Mis, all of them. I reread all the required reading, 5 Love Languages, Man's Search for Meaning, The Alchemist, whatever it was. I re-listened to My Zacchaeus 400 times. So I really connected with the school like as best I could to really go back there. And that was really painful, but there was something very healing about doing it, because it kind of, once I got it out and wrote it and it was just down there, the song, the school, none of it had any power over me anymore, if that makes sense. Because I knew it was like finally out there and it was going into the world and people were going to have their opinions. That's undeniable. But my truth was going to be out there and no one could dispute that. And these things suddenly didn't hold any power over me. Suddenly Break On Through to the Other Side by The Doors is not me breaking through a chain of human bodies and like hurting myself. It's just The Doors. But I think it really took like getting this out to get to a place where none of this had as much power over me.
Yeah, well, that's an incredibly brave and like warrior approach that you took. And it must have been super painful, but I'm so happy that was the outcome, that there was some catharsis around that.
Yeah. So
after leaving Carlbrook, you went back to regular high school with your old friends. I mean, how did you adjust back in that world?
The whole thing that like, I look at all my letters that were like, you can't go back to your school because your friends and the parties. And then I ended up right back there. And I'm like, so what was all that for? Because I ended up right where you said I couldn't be. It was hard. I really never felt adjusted ever again. To be honest with you, I never felt adjusted into my life again until now. From the moment I arrived in the woods until about now, I never felt adjusted into my life again. I never felt right. I always felt misunderstood by people, that there was like this whole piece of me that they didn't understand and that I wasn't willing to tell them, unless maybe I was on like 10, like so much cocaine that I didn't even know what was left and what was right. And maybe I was talking about it high, but otherwise I was like living this false reality, because who I was and then who I was pretending to be weren't the same person. Mm-hmm. So I would say that, I guess, again, I didn't cope with it. It was terrible. And it's not, I've had so many of my friends call me after they've read the book and be like, I feel like I owe you an apology. And of course that just makes me want to cry, but they're like, I just thought that you were just a mess. And like, I never thought to ask you why, or like, I never thought like maybe behind all the drugs or whatever, that there was a reason that you had been through something. I think like the biggest lesson I've learned like over the past few years even the stuff you see in the news is that you never know what someone's struggling with. We abuse people, we abuse people, and then you find out this like horrific thing that they're living through or that they've been living with, and it's terrible. And I guess I feel like I was living like that for so long, that I was holding on to this like dark secret that I knew if I talked about, that I was just gonna get, told I was a liar and whatever else. So for a long time, I just didn't talk about it. But now I just feel this like freedom amongst the people who know me, because now they know exactly what I've been through.
It's a really powerful message, that when you see people behaving badly, when you see them engaging in destructive behavior or maladaptive behavior, to instead of judging and pointing fingers, to ask the question, are you okay? Are you going through something? Like, where's this coming from? I mean, I think I that resonates with me very powerfully. And I think it's a really good message to impart, because, that's 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, it's hurt, it's trauma.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what came after high school for you?
After high school came rock bottom, and rock bottom had no bottom. It just went lower and lower. I can't believe I'm alive. I cannot believe I survived after high school. I did every drug you could ever find.
Mm-hmm.
I had not done drugs like that before, but I certainly did them after. I had already struggled with eating disorders, but I really struggled with them after. Basically everything Carlbrook told me I was, which they used to tell me I was a drug addict, and I had smoked pot a few times and never even, never done coke, or certainly never seen heroin or any of those drugs. I basically fulfilled exactly who they said I was.
Mm-hmm.
And it got addicted to pills. There was no bottom. I couldn't stop. And all I was doing was running away from my own life story. And I didn't care who I hurt in the process. I didn't care if I hurt myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to medicate. And I know this is something that you've talked about, but yeah, I mean, I would say from after Carlbrook till, 5, 6, 7 years ago, my life was just rock bottom. Like, I would have moments where I would carry a job, like I got a job at Vogue and work, but then I would mess it up. Then I would the drugs would get in the way. Like, I showed up to Vogue like one day on coke. Like, so I would have moments where my life worked, and then I would have something happen. Like, I had my miscarriage and I didn't know how to deal with the trauma, because Carlbrook taught me that when you experience trauma, you scream, you yell, you rip people apart, you call them a whore, my relationship was destroyed. My boyfriend and I broke up. I was devastated. I wanted a child so bad. I think I thought that would make me feel whole. I don't know what I thought, but I think I felt so bad, like just worthless after. I believed everything Carlbrook had told me at the low moments. I didn't believe the good things they told me, because they were always outweighed with the lie they gave me, with when they taped worthless abuser on my shirt. So when I had the miscarriage, I just like resorted to everything I learned at Carlbrook, and the relationship fell apart. And that's kind of how my life was. Things would be good, and then I would, and then I wouldn't have the tools to deal with them. And then it would be bad again. So it was this constant like up and down and up and down, but the ups were way shorter than the downs. It would be like up for a day and down for 7.
When did things start to improve for you?
When I accepted the reality of what I had been through, honestly.
Okay.
When I understood that I was different and that I didn't have the story of a lot of my friends. I didn't go to regular high school, and I experienced prolonged complex abuse as a child, day in and day out. And when I accepted that and stopped running from that, I was able to start working towards having a functioning life.
Okay. Yeah. Did you go to therapy?
I hid from therapy for a long time. I
Understand.
swore I would never talk to a therapist ever again. But eventually I did. It was actually, yeah, eventually I was referred to a therapist. And yeah, I mean, I arrived to her just a mess, like did not know how to talk to a therapist. I didn't trust her. I didn't trust the process, but I do see a therapist. I like speak to my therapist on text all day long. I'm probably her most annoying client. You know, I call her like anytime something goes wrong. I'm like, I need to talk to you. You know, I'm like, I don't care if it's 7 a.m. or whenever you can squeeze me in. But I am a big advocate for therapy now.
Great. Why did you decide to write the book now?
I decided, well, I mean, in fairness, I've been researching the topic for 6 or 7 years. I got the book deal in 2019, but I had already spent over a year writing a proposal. So I actually started writing the book in like 2017. And before that, I had already written like a TV show version because I knew after the short that I wanted to do something, but I couldn't figure out like what to do. But I was determined to put this story into the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally landed on it's going to be a book. So from like 2017 until now, I have been working on this same book. And after the proposal was done and I got the book deal, I wrote, you know, I had already had the book mapped out, but I spent quarantine just just understanding because there's so much. And if I were to tell everything about Carlbrook, it would be 1,000-page book. And nobody wants to read 1,000-page book. And you only want to read about so much abuse. So I really had to pick and choose how am I going to best, like, how do I expose like what these schools are? And it's not just my school, it's all of them. The biggest thing for me was I was ready to do it. I wasn't in an angry place about the school anymore, which that was important. Because nobody's going to listen to an angry memoir. I knew that. If I didn't approach this at a place of forgiveness, then it wouldn't speak to anybody. But the biggest reason I did it is because so many people are still living in these schools today. There are schools open everywhere, and it breaks my heart. And I get so many messages from parents, from kids that survived a school and they do not know how to talk about it, and they're like, either getting, you know, bullied for talking about it, or they're scared because they don't want to be called a liar, or they just don't know how to talk about it. I had multiple parents, but one publicly wrote me this, so I feel okay to tell it, but that their kid was in a program, and a WIS program, and that he's depressed just like I was, but the school was telling her he's not, he's manipulating you, like saying all this terrible stuff for her to keep her child in this program, when really he was just depressed and needed someone to, you know, hear him and see him. Yeah. And she read my book, and that is why she brought him home. So I did it now because I was ready. But I did it for the kids who need someone to advocate for them, who are in these schools right now or surviving them, like surviving the fact they were in one. Because I still grapple with it every day.
Yeah.
Like there isn't a day that goes by where I don't think about it, you know, in some way. And and it's more now, like when I get down, I just look at the messages of all the people who write me. It's helping them, of the parents, the scared parents who are like, I am not going to do this to my kid. Like I had a parent write me and be like, I'm picking my kid up on Wednesday. Thank you for this book.
Wow.
So despite like how hard this journey was, I was never going to be fully ready to tell it. It was the most painful thing I've ever done. I mean, I almost threw the book out 1,000 times. I called my publishers. I called you. I was like, this book is done. It was so hard, but it is so worth it when I see how many people write me and are just like, thank you, because that's how I felt. Like I didn't know how to talk about it, and I just wanted it off my chest and gone. And that's how I feel now. It's off my chest. It's in the world. And, I had someone say to me today, like, now I feel like I don't have to try and explain this to people. I can just give this book and say, this is what I've been through, and they'll know. I don't have to try and explain it. And I feel the same way, like you having read it and like all my best friends having read it. Now it's just this feeling that they know and I know.
Yeah.
And I think I make a lot more sense to people now.
I think so too.
Okay. I remember when you said to me, you were like, after you read the book, you're like, I get now why the book was so hard for you.
I do. So I just have 2 more questions, and then let's take a couple from the audience.
Okay.
So looking back on your time there, what was the hardest part about Carlbrook?
Oh God, I'm like, can I say all of it?
Yeah, you can.
I mean, all of it, but the hardest part about Carlbrook was the way I had to treat people without having a choice. And the fact I have to live with how I treated people now. That I really had to say terrible things to people, that they developed a culture of you have to call your friends out in group and rail people and abuse them and use their disclosures against them and things that deeply hurt them. That was the worst part about Carlbrook, like how they forced you to make other people feel.
Yeah.
Because everything, I already hated myself. Like I was so depressed, but they just amplified it so much.
Yeah.
And then half of it wasn't even true. It was just like, I'm just going to label you with this. And then people ran with it the whole time I was there. So that's definitely the hardest part.
I'm so sorry you went through that. I really am. And I'm sorry for all the other kids too. Okay, so my last question was, you were living in Nashville while writing the book. Why did you decide to write it there?
I had to get out of LA. I was like, I just had so much stuff attached to LA. Like some of the book was in LA. I'm from the South. I just needed like air. I needed trees. I needed seasons. I had friends there. One of my best friends was moving there. Another friend of mine had a place that I could rent. Like all the stars. I didn't know where I was going to go. Mm-hmm. I just knew I needed to leave LA to finish it because it was so emotionally draining. So I looked at Texas, I looked at Montana, I looked at, anywhere where I loved or knew people, like anywhere where I could be around nature and just be with myself and my feelings could be okay. And Nashville is just where the stars aligned, like where I had a place to live and where I had a support system. So yeah, that's Nashville just kind of happened. It was close. Like my parents are in South Carolina, Nashville, I guess it just was meant to be. And I love Nashville. I have a deep love for Nashville. I have a deep appreciation for what Nashville gave me.
That's amazing. Okay, we have a couple more minutes, and if anyone has a question, bring it up now. Okay, the first question is from Suzanne. Your personal experience at Carlbrook sounds harrowing. Was it more or less the same for the other students?
I say this very clearly in my book, that everyone has their own experience. And some people credit Carlbrook for saving their life. So I will just say that again now. I did not have that experience. And none of my close friends, and certainly none of the people sending me private messages had that experience at Carlbrook or other schools. But I do know that it was good for some people. And some people will, I actually had someone write me 2 days ago and say to me, I went to 2 schools. One was really abusive and terrible, and the other one saved my life. What do you think I do? Because when I say that a place saved my life, people bully me and attack me and say, how can you support, and I was like, first of all, it's never okay to talk to someone like that, but just know your truth is welcome on my Instagram anytime. You can write on my photos that this place helped you, because I hope that is the case for some people. That wasn't the case for me, but if someone tells me that was the case for them, that's great. But, I just know that the people I love, the people that I still talk to today, they still are dealing with it. Mm-hmm. But I will never diminish somebody else's feelings for what they took from a program or didn't take.
Yeah.
But yeah, my experience was obviously negative.
This is from Hillary. Can you tell us about how your relationship with your family changed before, during, and after Carlbrook and now? Great question.
Well, before it obviously wasn't great, or I wouldn't have gone to Carlbrook. Like, I was very angry. But that was just, I was a teenager. I was depressed. I don't know. I didn't know how to process my emotions. I didn't know how to talk to people. Like, I didn't know how to confide in my parents. After Carlbrook, it was horrific. I refused to speak. I didn't see them for years. I was so betrayed and so hurt. And I didn't know, I was ashamed to tell them some of what I had been through because I was also embarrassed. And I know that is terrible. Like, you should never be embarrassed and ashamed by all this, but I was. I was embarrassed by like the different things I had to lie about and say. So I think that I didn't talk to my parents for years because I was just too embarrassed to tell them what had happened. My relationship with them now is great. It's fine. I was in South Carolina with them recently, like canoeing. They've been super supportive about the book. Like, you know, keep writing me, like, how's it going? And, you know, my brother, I went with my brother to Montana for Thanksgiving. I know you remember this, to ask him how to tell my parents, because I had been working on it for this many years. And they knew I was working on some things. I'd be like, send me my letters, my journals, like everything. Like, I've been asking them for Carlbrook stuff for years. He was like, just so supportive. So that was nice because I was so scared that they were going to just be mortified. And when I called my mom to tell her, I was just waiting on her to, like, I don't know, because I'm from the South. You don't air your dirty laundry out. And she was like, you know, it's your story. So, you know, it's your story to tell. So you should tell it. So I felt like a huge relief when I wasn't met with, like, let's put the white picket fence up and pretend like nothing happened.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that pretty much answers the last question. Have your parents, siblings read your book, which sounds like they have.
Slow. I sent it to them much earlier.
Yeah.
Like probably around the time, or maybe even before. I don't even remember when you read it, but I sent it to them. I sent it to a few people early. Yeah, I mean, it was hard. I mean, I've had friends who get through 50 pages and are like, all right, I can't read it. Sorry. Like, that was enough. I fully get you already. But yeah, it was very hard for them. But they have not put any of that onto me. Never once have they been like, I wish you didn't write that, or they haven't written me and made it about them, you know, their feelings about, you know, they've just been supportive.
That's amazing.
And that doesn't mean they're not feeling other things, but they're not having me carry the burden of that.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for having this dialogue. Thank you so much for writing this book, for caring about the experience of others. You just have a giant heart, and you're a damn good writer.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So when they were like, who do you want to moderate? I was like, I need Molly, because Molly gets it. I'm like, Molly, I mean, we have very different stories, but like at the core of all of these stories is the same, like a child who felt misunderstood. You know, one thing leads to another, but at the core, we're all the same. Like, I didn't only write this book for kids who have been to schools. I hope this book speaks to parents who don't understand their kids, and kids who just feel depressed and lonely and don't know where to turn, and whether they're being bullied at school or they just don't know how to deal with their emotions. Like, this book is for all of these people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you have been on this journey with me for so long.
I am too.
And thank you to everyone who stayed on for the technological issues.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you both. That's a wrap on our presentation. Thank you to our guests and to everyone who tuned in this evening. We greatly appreciate everyone's time and your support of independent bookstores. Support our bookstore and our authors and purchase a copy of tonight's featured book. Just click the green purchase button that reads Stolen, a Memoir, directly below the viewer screen. Remember, they do come with book plates, signed book plates. If you want regular updates on our upcoming events, make sure to follow us on Crowdcast and subscribe to our newsletter. Have a great evening and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.